John Whittle, as he joins us now from thebigspur.com. It was remarkable. I think we were all beginning, John, in the seventh inning of game 2 of that super regional to okay, can I make this trip work to OKC, or what are our plans for next weekend? What's the draw going to look like? Who are they going to get? I mean, they're up 3 runs. You're starting to feel a little comfortable. But the Bruins have won 12 national championships. That's the most all time. They're a proud program. They won over 50 games this year. And sometimes teams like that, they can find ways to get it done. And they did at Beckham Field this weekend. It does not, though, take away from an incredible first season for Ashley Chastain Woodard.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, teams like UCLA, sometimes they just win. I mean, that's what they've done all year. They've won 54 games, 55 games, something like that. I mean, when you're not used to losing, you figure out a way. You're able to figure out a way, and they have one of the best offenses, one of the best home run hitting teams in the country. It just happened that way for the Gamecocks this year. I thought South Carolina, based on its resume, deserved to be that number 8 seed and host the Super Regional. But at the same time, it's like UCLA had a little bit of a different resume, but they were really, really good and really, really strong in what they do well. And it just ended up being a little bit better on the weekend for one game and plus 1 inning, and that plus 1 inning was just enough. But I thought South Carolina acquitted itself really nicely. Major kudos to Coach Woodard, Coach Ashley Chastain Woodard. I mean, like, you look back and I believe that South Carolina had one lady on the All SEC team, and to me, what a hell of a coaching job. If you can be the number 8 national seed, have only one player who is a second team All SEC performer, I mean, you're getting more out of the sum of the parts, so to speak. And to me, that's what coaching is maximizing your talent and putting them in best positions to be successful. And I mean, I'd never been to a softball game in my life before this year at South Carolina. And, I went to about a dozen of them, and, I had a great time following the team. And certainly great things are still to come for Coach Chastain Woodard and, what they've got going on at South Carolina softball.
Yeah, no doubt. And correct myself, by the way, shut out for the first time all year at home. They were shut out twice this season, once on the road at Auburn. But regardless, I mean, yeah, this team came in too, UCLA, John. They had hit 93 home runs, and they only hit 2 on the weekend against South Carolina. And, you could tell on Sunday that, the Gamecocks maybe had run out of gas a little bit, and UCLA was feeling it. And understandably so. I mean, after what happened, but I think you make really an incredible point. I think what you're getting at there is she maximized every ounce of talent out of every player that she had throughout the season. Her and her staff did. I mean, you want to congratulate Jody and Katie and everybody there. I mean, could you make an argument that they had one of the best rosters in this league? I mean, I guess somebody could probably make an argument, but I don't know that they did, John. I would say that you could probably look around and see more talent in a bunch of places besides right here in Columbia, South Carolina. But I don't know that anybody squeezed the juice out as much as they did, putting them in roles to be successful. And they had a lot of confidence. They believed in themselves. That is coaching right there. And if that's what they're going to do year in and year out, they're not going anywhere. They'll be right here in position every season to get to the middle of America.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. We can sit here and debate the talent level all they want. I mean, I look and, I'm certainly no softball guru and haven't been following it for years and years, but I look at it individually, player by player, and I'm like, God, if there's a third baseman out there much better than Ella Chansey, then well, good for her. If there's a much better player out there than, Brooke Blankenship, then good for her. And same with Lexi Winters, and same with Carly Shelton, and same with Ariana Rhodey, and same with Quincy Lilio. But the SEC coaches voted on who makes all SEC team. And, they put one on there, and that was Sam Gress. And, I don't know. I don't know. I think South Carolina will just continue to get better, and the more that South Carolina is around, the better players will be able to recruit and bring in and add a little bit of depth to the roster, and see how it goes from there. But certainly a heck of a season for Ashley and her team, and congratulations to her.
Yeah, we'll have to confirm the numbers and see what we can get out of what happened around the ballpark this weekend. But last week, Ashley did mention to us that they had, I think, 10 or maybe more than 10. Maybe it ended up being a little bit less, but somewhere around that number as far as transfers in town on official visits. And she had mentioned too, I was talking to her while I was watching practice back in April, John, and she had brought up to me then, she was like, yeah, the transfer portal, it kind of sucks as far as the timeline of it, because it's open during the postseason. So we've got to figure out this and figure out that. And we'd like to see this thing backed up on the other side of the College World Series so we can focus on our team. But the byproduct of that is if you're one of the 8 teams hosting a super regional, then it kind of pays off for you because you get to bring them into that environment this weekend. So, we'll see what comes of all that. I don't know if you're going to end up doing any digging on that or not. The other point I'll make is this. Watching the regionals and then watching the super regionals again this weekend and watching them in comparison to some of the other ballparks across the country, some of these other places that have invested in, they've got more tradition. They have invested in their softball programs. It took me back to the early 2000s under Coach Tanner when we started seeing regional after regional, super regional after super regional taking place at Sarge Fry Field. And you would begin to look around. Arkansas at that point in time had made some upgrades in their ballpark, and there's some other places who had done some things. And that's when the conversations were beginning to be had about, what do we do here? Do we upgrade Sarge Fry and do this, that, and the other? Or do we build an entirely new ballpark? Now, they're not going to build a new ballpark. I mean, they've just renovated this thing like 10 years ago, and it is beautiful. But watching it on TV, you can see, hey, look, if they're going to continue to be pretty good, and this school is going to rally behind this and the fans, and they're going to invest themselves in this program, then we're probably going to need to invest in that as well, John. So I'll be really curious. Not that there's not enough going on at South Carolina right now with renovations and projects and all that. They got plenty to worry about. There's no question. I get it. And I'm not trying to put anything on anybody else's plate, but at least it does kind of bring back those feelings of 20, 25 years ago when you knew you were building something big and they knew that they had to at least start looking towards the future. I think we're going to start to hear about some of that in the coming months and years, and maybe years, but certainly the coming months.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And I mean, you're going to need more than one entrance to the ballpark. They had a great time shooting those little drone shots of everybody lined up that far, to get into the gate. But people don't want to be lined up that far to try to get into a gate.
I know.
So you're going to need more than one entrance so you can have more than 2 ticket takers and 2 bag checkers. So yeah, I mean, something's going to have to be done over there to tweak some things. You'd love to see some outfield stands. I know it's really tight back there. I don't think you can do much in terms of moving the track, but you got the sand volleyball courts out there in right field, and I wouldn't think it would be too tough to shift sand volleyball courts, backwards or whatever direction you think, an extra 7,500 feet, and be able to add some stands out there in right field. I think that adds a little bit of character anyway, but there's going to have to be a few more seats in there. There's going to have to be some other access points. It's packed up there on the concourse, during games like this, and softball is gonna have a bigger following, as your buddy Mike is talked about quite a bit. It's a sport that folks can latch on to pretty easily, and if South Carolina continues to win and be a winner, then more fans will show up, and it's not going to be a sellout every day, but there's going to be a lot more fans in attendance to where you can use some of this stuff. So if you have a coach like Ashley and a program that's having success, people are going to be drawn to that, and Beckham Field is incredibly nice, but it can be a little bit better.
There's no doubt. And I want to make sure we credit the grounds crew as well. The folks that take care of Founders Park and things, they do a wonderful job at Beckham Field. They do a wonderful job. The surface there is outstanding as well.
That's one thing South Carolina's athletics department does really well in general is they have nice playing surfaces across all sports. Take it over to Stone Stadium with soccer, Founders Park, Beckham Field, Williams-Brice Stadium, everywhere. South Carolina's grounds crew does a phenomenal job, and those guys really deserve a ton of credit.
Yeah, gotta get our man Clark Cox back on here soon. He always deflects all the credit. I will say, last week, one of the things that came out, John, from the future renovations to Williams-Brice Stadium, where they were talking about loading docks, and Jeremiah Donati mentioned, being able to do concerts and stuff like that in Williams-Brice. And we've seen them in there before. Beyonce's been in there, and Kenny Chesney. I've joked with Clark about that before because they had soccer there last year, as we all well know. And I was like, well, you could do this, you could do that. And he's just shaking his head. He's like, man, come on, man. Come on. You're just adding on to our plate here. But they're revenue producers, and that's where things are going. Yeah, I know. Exactly. If somebody wants to give them the money in lieu of having to host the things, I'm sure they'll take it. But I don't think that's going to happen, John. I think that they're going to want to find a way. If they're going to build all this, they're going to put all these suites and stuff. Yeah, probably going to start looking for other things to be able to have in the ballpark to help pay for it, I would imagine, too.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremiah said in that meeting last Friday or Thursday, I've got all my days confused at this point. But that they expect to bring in about $200 million from the sale of suites and everything that goes into that. Like that's going to be a huge revenue boost, or at least to pay things off. So, it's yeah, I mean, it's a big financial deal in a whole lot of respects.
All right, John, let's move over to baseball here. Obviously, the Gamecocks are going to be big-time buyers in the portal coming up on June the 2nd. So that's Monday. The portal will officially open on June the 2nd. Clearly, last week, your article came out. Everybody knows about it. Everybody's read it. It's made its way across Gamecock country and beyond. What's out of curiosity here, what type of feedback have you gotten on that thing?
I don't know. I mean, it's largely been a whole lot of people taken aback by some of the stuff that's gone on. For me, I think the biggest deal, and this is just my opinion, but to me, the biggest deal in all of this is the fact that I don't feel like the players were really set up to be successful. I mean, we talked about maximizing talent, when we were talking about softball. I feel like it's kind of the opposite for, how the baseball team was set up. Like I know a lot of people go straight down to the disgruntlement, discontent, toxicity, whatever word you want to use. And, I'm not trying to say that that's meaningless, but at the same time, like, if you're working out and you're bigger and stronger and better, if you have access to these tools that help you get better, like, your TrackMan, your hitting labs, your partnership with Maven, like those kind of things, like you have the opportunity to be more successful. And then that in turn, that probably lessens your disgruntlement, and amongst everybody. Mm-hmm. And to me, the biggest deal is, not having these guys set up for success. And, that to me is kind of the most damning stuff that needs to be talked about the most. The other stuff can kind of take care of itself a little bit. And I'm not saying that, what the players had to hear and what some of these folks had to go through, I'm not trying to minimize that, but at the same time, like that's minimized if you flip the record around, if you're 26-4 or 24-6 or even 16-14, like, mm-hmm. The dynamics change a little bit. And sure, like I don't know, like I think that some of the focus is in places where I think the focus should be more in some of the other places and where it is. I mean, it's all a big deal, or else I wouldn't have written all of it. It's all a big deal, and some things beyond what I wrote. But to me is kind of the failure of the coaches to put the players in the best position to be successful. That is most damning.
Yeah, I think the way that you did it was pretty brilliant because when I think about baseball, John, and you know this, I always come at it from an on the field type angle, if that makes sense. As far as how guys are performing, decisions of where guys are hitting in the lineup, why they might not be comfortable there, where guys are pitching, why they're not pitching. Like that's the way that I just, it's hard for me to get out of that. You know what I'm saying? Like I always think about things from a decision-making process first in the game of baseball. And you came at it from more of an off the field angle and what is preparing them for all this. Coaching decisions, it doesn't matter who the manager is. It could be Paul Maneri or Mark Kingston or Chad Holbrook or Ray Tanner or Bobby Cox or Joe Torre. Name anything can always be questioned, and rightfully so. But we never have the full scope of information that these guys use to make the decisions that they make. We don't have it. So while we can question it, again, we don't have that stuff. So it's hard to, you can argue it, but then you can easily argue the other side of what you don't know. And so it's very fair by you and how you wrote this thing and sticking to things that really can't be. I'm not really sure how some of these things can be argued. They are, I mean, leaving a kid's name off of a roster is like that. I don't know how that can be explained. You know what I'm saying? Those type of things. And so I'm curious, what South Carolina, I mean, there's no changes that are expected. I mean, they're moving forward. I'm curious as to what the staff, not the administration, like what is the staff going to do to get these things corrected? And I don't know that anybody's going to have an answer on that until you see them play next year. And quite frankly, see them play for about a month or more before you can ever even begin to gauge some of that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the players have to speak up about what they want. And that's regardless as to who that is. Like if they feel like they need to be in the weight room more, then they need to speak up and go to the coaches. If they feel like they need TrackMan in their bullpens, and they need to stand up and go to the coaches and say, hey, we've got to do this stuff. And if they feel like they need better team camaraderie, if they feel like there needs to be a greater connection between the players and the staff, like that all has to be solved internally, and some of that stuff can be solved internally, without coaching changes or without any like major overhaul to the program. So some of the stuff can be corrected to better position these guys for next year. But the coaches probably aren't going to take what I write is the gospel. They're probably going to need to hear it from the guys who are in the dugout. So, hopefully some of these things change, and hopefully some of these guys speak up a little bit, and, to their coach, and, see what evolves from there. But, that's one of the first steps in getting this thing turned around. Another one of the first steps is, going out and, recruiting a bunch of good players too. So, we'll see how it all evolves.
Do you feel like this? I don't know if this is a fair question necessarily, John, but I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I hear what you're saying, and I'm 100% agree with you as far as, look, if the players who are here, if they have issues with how things are handled, if they have, utilizing TrackMan, I mean, I can't imagine, would they pay for that Maven system, John, $300,000 or something like that, right?
Something along those lines.
Okay, so I can't imagine whoever funded that is probably very happy that it's just sitting there. I wouldn't be. And but all these things, jumbled up into one big bag here. If the players have issues, do you feel like players are apprehensive to bring these issues to the attention of their coaching staff in fear of some sort of backlash? Is that a fair question? Is that not a fair question?
Well, I mean, just even leaving the backlash part of it out, like it's intimidating to go talk to a coach about stuff like that anyway. And
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, even if you're worried about just being looked at cross-eyed, like you're a player who's, 20 years old going to, tell a coach, hey, you're not doing this right, more or less. Like, I mean, that might be how Paul Mainieri views it. And maybe, I mean, he's probably like, I got a College World Series championship and 1,500 wins, and I got this guy coming up and telling me I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that might be how he perceives it, or a player might think that's how he's going to perceive it. So it's not easy necessarily on these guys to go up and have those types of conversations. So, there's some balance there. I mean, there needs to be some understanding on both sides of how to best rectify this thing.
And the way that I've always viewed this is, and you're right, if it's one player or two players, but if you got an entire group of kids saying, hey, look, these are our issues, I think that it's negligence on the staff's side to dismiss any of that. I mean, I would personally rather see a staff that says, all right, look, we got a lot of stuff going on here. First of all, we were terrible this year. Okay, let's just start with number one. All right, we were nowhere near where this program should be, nowhere near the standard of South Carolina baseball. Everything should be under evaluation. That includes me as a coach. That includes these guys as coaches. That includes you as players. That includes the strength staff. That includes whatever. But I would think once you see all of that, if I'm the coach or the coaches, I want to gather as much information as humanly possible in as calming of a manner as you possibly can. Like, not having a bunch of kids in there shouting back and forth and, you shouting at them or they're upset with you. Like, I'd be like, let's all talk about this. Let's all write this stuff down. Let's see if we can do this. Like, that's leadership to me. And I don't know how common that is amongst other locker rooms, because I've never had to, John, we don't go into other locker rooms and figure out what's wrong with everybody else's teams, or let alone this one. But I think if you're the leader of a program and your expectation, Paul Mainieri's resume, it's stellar. The guy's been around forever. He's beaten everybody, he's won everything, he's done everything. I would think if you want to uphold that legacy, maybe this is a point where you need to be a little bit more willing to understand maybe some things have changed. Maybe I do need to listen to these guys a little bit more. Maybe the players need to maybe we need to get into and have a kumbaya where we can all understand and squash this thing. If we're not planning to make any changes except for bringing players into the portal, from the portal, and send players to the portal, then we need to figure out as a unit how we're going to move forward here. I see that as leadership, not lack thereof.
No, I agree with you. And, one comment that I've seen made, and I think somebody even said it in the chat box earlier that I want to address, like, it's not every guy who hates the program. In fact, most people don't hate the program. Like, most people love being at the University of South Carolina and love being a baseball player at the University of South Carolina. Like, there's a lot that they want to do differently and do better. But even then, like, that's not everybody. In the political world, you hear people talk about 80-20 issues and how, you want to be on the 80-20, the 80 side of the 100%, right? And like, but even if there's an 80-20 issue, which most of the country, obviously feels a part of, there's still 20 people or 20% of people who feel another way. Like, I know a few folks have come out and spoken out about the coaching staff, or have said they're coming back to the program. Like, that was always going to happen, and it should. It might be part of the 20%, or, I'm not even saying it's an 80-20 issue necessarily for South Carolina. I would think it's probably pretty close in terms of the amount of folks who want to see some change. And probably some of the ones who are staying want to see some change too. But, a few folks coming out and saying something, positive is it doesn't mean that, the other stuff is untrue. So, I think you will. I'm not saying you're going to see coaching changes, but I think you're going to see some change and how things are run. And to your point, those things have to be addressed, and I think some things will, and we'll see see exactly what kind of impact that has, going forward. But remember, this time last week they were about to play their final game. They just finished player exit meetings, a couple of days ago. The portal hasn't even opened yet. Like, we're still really close to the end of this, and to the end of this past season. Like, I don't expect a whole bunch of answers for next season right now. They're still sorting through a lot. There's still a lot to sort through, and players are too. Like, players have gone through their exit meetings. They're in the world of college athletics that we're in. Like, you have to try to recruit your players back. There's the financial aspect of it now with regards to scholarship money and NIL, more importantly, or rev share, or just cash dollars, more or less, I guess is a better way to say it for right now. Like, all of that stuff still has to be discussed, and they've discussed all that with the players in their exit meetings. And some of these guys are trying to decide whether to stay or go. Some have already made the decision to go and haven't announced, and a couple of guys have already made the decision to stay and haven't announced. So but there's still a lot of roster things to kind of figure out within the guys from last year's team. So we'll kind of see how it all evolves going forward. But I mean, it's still in the infancy of any kind of talk of changes or whatever else, and how the roster is going to go. So we'll see how it all evolves in the coming weeks and probably a few months as well, and see what happens come fall in terms of the different dynamics and what is being implemented.
How much of an impact on this situation do you think having a new administration at South Carolina is? Or I don't know about administration, because a lot of the same people have been around for a long time, and hopefully will continue to be. They're good people, but the AD is new. I mean, he's brand new to this thing. He just took over, John, like not even 6 months ago, and he's got a lot on his plate with Williams-Brice Stadium and renovations. We got the rev share stuff coming up. I mean, there are some major pressing issues that he cannot miss on. Like, he's got to nail all of that, and it is at the top of the totem pole, and I get it. But this is a very rare situation, if you ask me, and you just wonder, being a new athletics director, how he wants to handle or maybe not handle some of this. I guess what I'm getting at is, if a prior administration was still here, do you feel like we would have at least had some sort of comment from the university to this point? Because we haven't heard a word.
That's a great question. It's so much hypothetical. I don't know that I can give you a great answer.
It's hard.
There's so much, as you said, happening right now. I mean, you just have on the same day my story came out. You have the announcement of the phase 2 of Williams-Brice Stadium project, getting an extra $350 million in there. You've got all the dynamics of the House settlement going on. And we have to remember, and this is not a knock on Jeremiah or anybody, but South Carolina wanted to hire a athletics director with more of a athletics director type of background, right? Like the financial side, the fundraiser side, that's what they were going for in this hire. And those are Jeremiah Donati's strengths. Like, his background is in fundraising. What he enjoys doing is the booster side of things, plus the facility side of things. Like, he's been involved in major projects, especially at TCU, but that's one of his biggest deals. He worked with the agency. These these are the things that his background is in and he's best at and is passionate about. And that's a big deal of what's going on at South Carolina and in the college sports world in general right now. And it's important for the future of all of athletics to, as you said, to be sure those things are nailed. And, you know, that's where his chief focus is right now. So, you know, whether it was his first year, whether it's his fifth year, like I feel like those are probably where his focuses would be anyway. You have other folks in your administration. Every sport has its own assistant AD who is kind of the lead of each team. And, you know, a lot of the day-to-day responsibilities of that, you know, fall in that person's hands. You know, not like Jeremiah Donati probably doesn't know and probably doesn't need to know that Brandon Stone was left off the lineup card at Texas A&M, you know, as it happens. Like I don't know that he needs to get a call on the way back from College Station and say, hey, you know, just so you know, like, but that's something that he probably needs to know after the fact as he's trying to evaluate the season. But, you know, he's down in Florida right now for SEC meetings. You know, Paul Maneri was finishing up his you know, exit meetings last week. Like, all of this stuff is sort of coming at the exact same time. And, you know, some of this stuff I think will be sorted out a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some of those questions you asked were kind of difficult to answer and really know. But, you know, there's so much going on right now. It's hard for me to find fault with you know, Jeremiah Donati or anything that you would think would have come across his desk or have made a decision on, just because of all that's going on right now. And that's not to minimize the baseball program. The baseball program here is obviously very important, but there's not much that can be done right this second to influence, you know, and move the needle when you look at, you know, some of the other things that's going on. And he may have just decided that they're stuck, you know, almost regardless. I mean, obviously there's some things that can come out that can change that. Not, I mean, just in general, I'm not saying that there are things that happen within South Carolina this year that could change that, but in general, like, you can always change your mind. But, you know, he may just say, hey, listen, let me think about this. I've got all of this stuff going on within the university right now. I've got to find this extra $20 million, you know, for the house settlement. I've got to do all this, that, and the other. You know, $7.2 million for a sport that loses money. I can't deal with that right now. You know, the players are going to have to go without TrackMan. Let's saddle up and ride. But I don't know that that's happening either. So we'll kind of see how it all sorts itself out here in the coming weeks and so forth, and see where it goes.
Yeah, a lot of blank spaces. I know, John. There's really no easy way to have the conversation because we just don't know enough.